My name is Holly, and the night my sister showed up at my door changed my life forever. It was close to midnight in Cleveland, rain hitting the windows like a warning. I opened the door and saw her standing there, her face pale, her hands trembling as she held two sleeping girls wrapped in thin blankets. She didn't wait to be invited in. She stepped past me, dropped a couple of bags on the floor, and said in a shaking voice that she just needed a few days to get things together. I tried to ask where she would go, but she avoided my eyes. The older child stirred mumbling softly, and my sister hushed her without a word. Before I could say anything more, she kissed both girls on the forehead and whispered that she would call soon. Then she was gone. I ran outside, but the car had already disappeared down the empty street. By morning, the girls woke up asking for their mother. I called the number she left, but no one answered. Days passed. I kept calling, hoping to hear her voice. After a week, the number was disconnected. The reality hit me like cold water. Those two little girls were now my responsibility. When Ella tugged my sleeve and asked, "Where's Mommy?" I had no answer. I only said that she was safe and would come soon, though deep down I already knew she wouldn't. That night, as I tucked them into bed, I understood that my life had shifted in a way that could never be undone. If you believe that family isn't just about blood but about who stays when everything falls apart, make sure to subscribe and stay with me for the rest of this story. Every family story here reminds us of one thing: real love is not spoken. It's shown by those who never walk away. The first month felt like a blur. Every day began before dawn and ended long after midnight. I had never raised children before yet. Suddenly, I found myself learning how to mix formula, soothe a crying baby, and keep a toddler entertained while balancing work. My tiny apartment became a maze of bottles, diapers, and toys scattered across the floor. I learned quickly that love alone was not enough to keep two little girls safe and fed. Responsibility had weight, and it pressed on my shoulders with every sleepless night. Ella cried most nights, her small chest rising and falling in hiccups until exhaustion took her. Nora refused to sleep without a light on her little hands, clinging to my arm as if letting go meant losing another piece of her world. Some nights I sat on the edge of the bed watching them breathe, wondering how my sister could walk away. But each morning, no matter how tired I was, I got up, brushed my hair, and went to work. I took a morning shift at a small accounting office downtown. It paid little, yet it offered structure. I left the girls with a kind neighbor, Mrs. Keene, who had raised 4 children of her own and seemed to understand everything without needing words. She often sent me home with warm casseroles or bags of hand-me-down clothes for the girls. Her kindness became one of the few constants in those chaotic days. Still, exhaustion followed me everywhere. My body ached. My mind swam in worry. I calculated bills in my head while folding laundry and planned grocery lists while rocking Ella to sleep. I smiled at coworkers, though my eyes burned from lack of rest. Sometimes I cried quietly in the bathroom at work, not because I regretted taking the girls, but because I feared failing them. One Saturday afternoon, my best friend Carla Mason came over with coffee and pastries. The sight of her made me feel human again. We sat at the small kitchen table while the girls played nearby. Carla had known me since college and spoke with the honesty only old friends could afford. She told me I was doing better than I thought, that what mattered most was showing up. When I admitted my fear of losing the girls if Janet suddenly returned, she reached across the table and took my hand. "You need to make it official," she said softly. "Apply for temporary guardianship. You've already been their parent in every way that counts." Her words stayed with me long after she left. That night, when the girls were asleep, I searched online for the process and started filling out forms. The paperwork took weeks to prepare, but every signature and copied document felt like one more step toward protecting them. I visited the county office on my lunch breaks, explaining my situation to a clerk who listened with patient eyes. When I finally submitted everything, the woman behind the counter said I would be notified soon. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived confirming I had been granted temporary guardianship of Ella and Nora Brooks. I held the envelope against my chest, tears slipping down my cheeks. It was not permanent, but it was proof that I had a right to keep them safe. A few days later came Nora's 4th birthday, the first one without Janet. I baked a small vanilla cake, decorated it with pink frosting, and placed 4 candles on top. The girls sang with excitement, their laughter filling the kitchen. When they blew out the candles, I clapped and smiled, hiding the sting behind my eyes. After they went to bed, I cleaned the table, put the leftover cake in the fridge, and sat alone in the quiet kitchen. I stared at the little paper crowns they had worn and felt both proud and broken. For the first time, I realized I was no longer just their aunt. I was the only person they had left. 5 years passed quietly. Life settled into a rhythm I never expected but grew to cherish. After the chaos of that night, I moved with Ella and Nora to a small house on the outskirts of Cleveland. The neighborhood was calm, filled with families, tidy lawns, and the sound of children playing in the evenings. It felt like the kind of stability I had always wanted but never thought I would find through raising my sister's children. The girls started school that fall, tiny backpacks bouncing on their shoulders as they ran toward the yellow bus. I stood on the porch each morning watching them leave, proud yet protective. At night, I helped with homework, made grilled cheese sandwiches, and listened to them chatter about friends' drawings and playground adventures. They called me Aunt Holly, but over time it started to sound like Mom in the way they leaned on me, the way they trusted me without hesitation. Sundays became our favorite day. We would walk to the park near the river, feed the ducks, and buy ice cream from a small stand run by an elderly couple who knew us by name. It was ordinary, but it was happiness in its simplest form. I never mentioned their mother. The girls had stopped asking years ago. They seemed to understand in their quiet way that some people leave and never come back. One afternoon, while sorting through mail after work, I noticed a large brown envelope with a legal seal. I opened it expecting bills or documents from the school, but instead found a death certificate. The name printed on it made my heart race. Evan Collins. It took me a moment to remember that he was Janet's ex-husband, the father of Ella and Nora. My hands trembled as I read the lines carefully. Cause of death: cardiac arrest. Age 41. But what stopped me was the section marked beneficiaries. Both girls were listed as recipients of a substantial trust fund. I sat down at the kitchen table staring at the paper until the edges blurred. Evan had left something behind for his daughters, something that could change their future, and I knew exactly what that meant. If Janet ever found out, she would come back. She would come for them not for love or regret, but for what their father had left. That night, I called a lawyer whose number I had saved years ago when I first filed for temporary guardianship. His calm voice eased me slightly, though not enough to silence the fear building in my chest. He said my case for full custody was strong, that I had been their sole provider for years, but until the final approval was signed by the court, Janet still had legal rights as their mother. The papers were in process, waiting for one last review. I thanked him and hung up, staring at the ceiling while the girls laughed in the next room, unaware of the storm that might come. The peace of the past 5 years suddenly felt fragile, like glass under pressure. I tucked the document into a drawer and told myself I would protect them, no matter who tried to return. 3 weeks later, a silver sedan pulled into my driveway. The sound of the engine was unfamiliar, too smooth, too confident for this quiet street. I looked out the window, drying my hands with a towel, and for a moment my brain refused to connect what my eyes were seeing. My sister Janet stepped out of the passenger seat wearing a pale blue dress, her hair styled perfectly, her nails painted like she had never washed a dish in her life. Beside her stood a man I had never seen before. He was tall, dressed in a tailored gray suit with a gold watch catching the afternoon sun. He didn't smile. He just scanned the house, the yard, the front porch, as if assessing value. I froze in place. 5 years had passed since she had walked away, and yet she appeared as though nothing had changed. My heart pounded in my chest. She looked cleaner, healthier, even expensive. I opened the door before they could knock. Janet smiled with an expression that was too bright to be sincere. "Holly," she said, stepping forward as if we had only missed a few phone calls. "You look good. I wanted to come see you and the girls. I think it's time we start over." Start over. Those words hit me like a slap. I crossed my arms, forcing myself to stay calm. "Start over," I asked quietly. "You left them here. You disappeared for 5 years. Do you have any idea what that did to them?" The man beside her, still silent, glanced toward the living room window where 2 small faces were peeking through the curtain. "Are those them?" he asked flatly. Janet turned, her smile tightening. "Yes. Ella and Nora." Then she looked back at me, her tone turning smooth again. "I've made mistakes, Holly. I wasn't well back then, but things are different now. I met Caleb, and he's been helping me get my life back together." So his name was Caleb. He nodded slightly but didn't offer a handshake. His eyes drifted past me into the house, stopping on the bookshelf where the folder with Evan's will still sat waiting for final approval. I noticed the moment Janet's gaze followed his. Her smile shifted, her pupils narrowing. Something inside me twisted. She knew. Somehow she knew about the inheritance. "Where did you hear about Evan?" I asked, my voice lower now. Her face flickered. "There are things people tell you," she said vaguely. "I heard he passed away." "I thought the girls deserved to know. I'm their mother after all." Her words made my stomach tighten. The audacity of saying I'm their mother after abandoning them for half a decade made me want to laugh and cry all at once. I took a step forward, keeping my tone steady. "You don't get to say that after walking out. You missed birthdays, school plays, doctor visits, nights of nightmares. I've raised them alone." Behind me, I could hear the faint sound of footsteps on the hardwood floor. Ella clung to the edge of the doorframe, staring wide-eyed. Nora hid behind her. Their faces were pale, confused, searching for recognition that didn't come. Janet bent down slightly, her voice falsely sweet. "Hi, baby. It's Mommy." The silence that followed was unbearable. Nora's lip trembled and Ella whispered, "Aunt Holly." "Who is she?" Caleb exhaled sharply, his patience wearing thin. "You've had them long enough," he said coldly. "Their mother wants them back. You don't have any right to keep them." I felt the world tilt, but I stood my ground. "You don't get to come here and talk about rights," I said. "You don't even know them. You don't know what it's been like." Janet straightened, the warmth in her voice gone. "We'll be back soon," she said, her tone clipped. "You'll hear from someone about this. I'm sure the court will see reason." Caleb opened the car door for her and she turned one last time before slipping inside. "You've done well, Holly," she said, and though the words sounded polite, there was poison underneath. The silver sedan rolled down the street, the engine fading into the distance. I closed the door, locking it twice. My hands were shaking. The girls ran to me, frightened, asking questions I couldn't answer. I pulled them close, whispering that everything would be okay, though I didn't believe it myself. Through the window, I watched the street grow quiet again, the air still carrying the echo of that car's tires. Deep down, I knew that moment was not an ending. It was a warning. Something had started, something I wasn't ready for. By the next morning, fear had settled in my stomach. The calm of the previous night had vanished, replaced by a quiet dread that clung to me like a second skin. When I stepped outside to collect the mail, a thick envelope rested on the porch, sealed in a way that already felt threatening. Inside was a formal letter from a family attorney representing my sister, demanding the immediate reinstatement of maternal custody for Ella and Nora. The words were wrapped in legal politeness, but every line struck like a blade. It spoke of the best interests of the children, of maternal rehabilitation, and of concerns regarding unauthorized guardianship. My hands trembled as I folded the letter back into its envelope. I called Carla that afternoon. Her voice was calm, steady, in a way that anchored me. She told me to breathe, to think before reacting. Letters like that are meant to scare you, she said. Let's find out what's really going on first. Together, we began to look deeper. Carla reached out to an old friend who worked in the county clerk's office, and within a few days, bits of information started to surface. Janet had accumulated significant debt in the last 2 years. Credit cards, payday loans, even a repossessed car. The man she was living with, Caleb, had a record of gambling arrests in 2 neighboring states. It wasn't confirmed yet, but there were rumors of illegal betting activity connected to him. The picture grew darker the more we learned. At night, when the girls were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by folders, receipts, and photo albums. I began documenting everything I had done for Ella and Nora over the last 5 years. School enrollment forms, vaccination records, rent receipts, hospital visits, birthday photos, even grocery bills. Each item was a small piece of proof that I had been there every day, that love in action mattered more than any DNA. I labeled every folder carefully and dated each entry. I wanted no room for doubt if it came to court. The following week, I received a call from the local police department. An officer named David Herrera said they were conducting a welfare verification related to a custody inquiry. My chest tightened, but I agreed to let them visit. When Officer Herrera arrived, his tone was polite, almost apologetic. He walked through the house taking notes as Ella showed him her drawings taped to the fridge, and Nora proudly pointed out the reading corner we had built together. He looked around the living room, noting the framed family photos and the shelf of toys, then turned back to me. "Ms. Brooks, I can see these girls are well cared for," he said. "This is standard procedure. I just need to make an official report." After he left, I sat on the porch swing, exhausted but slightly relieved. A few days later, he called again to follow up. "I've filed my report," he said. "It's clear you've been providing a stable environment. The department won't be recommending any custody transfer at this time." He paused before continuing, his voice lowering. "Between you and me, your sister doesn't look financially or emotionally prepared to raise those kids. That'll go to the judge next." When the call ended, I felt the weight of both relief and dread pressing on me. I had won a small battle, but the war was far from over. Janet's letter had opened a door that could no longer be closed. Somewhere out there, she and Caleb were planning their next move, and I had no doubt money was at the center of it. Still, as the evening light filled the house and I heard the girls' laughter from the yard, I promised myself one thing: whatever came next, I would not let anyone take them away. It was a Saturday morning when the sirens stopped outside my driveway. I was in the kitchen making pancakes for Ella and Nora when the red and blue lights flashed through the curtains. My heart clenched instantly. The girls ran to the window thinking it was something exciting. I knew better. Sirens rarely meant anything good. When I opened the door, 2 police officers were standing on the porch, one of them familiar. Officer David Herrera gave me a small nod, his expression calm but serious. Behind them, parked on the curb, stood a silver sedan. Janet leaned against it with her arms crossed. Caleb beside her, wearing dark sunglasses and impatience. "Ms. Brooks," the younger officer said, holding a clipboard. "We've received a report regarding child custody concerns. We were told there might be minors being held here without consent." His tone was formal, rehearsed. Caleb stepped forward before I could speak. "That's right. She's been keeping my fiancé's children illegally. Their mother wants them back." Officer Herrera raised his hand. "Sir, we'll handle this." Then he looked at me. "Ms. Brooks, may we come in?" I nodded and stepped aside. The girls clung to each other near the couch, whispering. Their faces turned pale when they saw Janet standing outside the window. Herrera entered first, scanning the living room where toys were neatly stacked, breakfast plates set on the table, and the air smelled of maple syrup. "Everything looks fine here," he said quietly. "Do you have your paperwork?" I went to the desk and retrieved a folder, the one containing my temporary guardianship approval medical records and copies of Janet's abandonment report. I handed it to him without a word. He flipped through the documents carefully, occasionally glancing up at me. "These are current," he said after a minute. "All in order." He turned to his partner. "She's the legal guardian on file." Outside, Caleb was pacing. He shouted, "That can't be right." "She's lying. Janet is their mother." Janet kept her eyes down, biting her lip. Herrera motioned for them to wait by the car, then followed me to the doorway. "Officer, you saw me before?" I said softly. "You know they're safe here." He nodded. "I do, Ms. Brooks. But we have to verify the complaint formally." He stepped outside to speak with Janet and Caleb. Through the screen door, I could hear bits of the conversation. His tone stayed professional, but it grew firmer. "Ma'am, according to this record, you were absent for over 5 years with no contact. That qualifies as abandonment under state law. Until the court rules otherwise, you have no standing to demand custody." Janet stammered something about changing her life, about wanting to do what was best for the girls. Herrera's voice dropped lower, steady but cold. "If that's true, then start by being honest. We also have notice of unpaid taxes and unresolved warrants connected to your address. I strongly advise you not to escalate the situation." Caleb stepped forward angrily. "You can't talk to her like that." Herrera looked him squarely in the eye. "Sir, I suggest you step back. There's also a note in the system about prior gambling investigations involving your name. This is not the place for confrontation. Leave now, or we'll have to file a disturbance report." For a moment, everything went silent. Then Caleb turned away, muttering under his breath. Janet hesitated before following him. They got back into the sedan, and as the engine roared, she glanced toward the window. Ella ducked behind the curtain. The car drove off, slowly disappearing around the corner. Herrera turned back to me. "I'll file the follow-up today," he said. "If they contact you again, call us immediately." "You've done nothing wrong, Ms. Brooks. The record shows you've provided stable care. Just keep everything documented." I nodded, barely able to speak. When they left, I closed the door and leaned against it, trembling from head to toe. The girls came running, hugging my waist. "Are they gone?" Nora whispered. "They're gone," I said, pulling them close. I kissed their heads and breathed in their scent of sugar and soap. "They won't take you away," I whispered against their hair. "Not now. Not ever." 3 weeks later, I stood in court palms, sweating. The wooden benches were filled with strangers whispering, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. Across the aisle sat Janet, dressed in a cream blazer that looked borrowed, her hair pulled back tightly, trying to project the image of control. Beside her, Caleb leaned back in his chair, adjusting his tie with an arrogance that made my stomach twist. Between them sat their lawyer, a polished man in a navy suit, whose every word dripped with confidence. He introduced Janet as a mother seeking redemption, painting her as a woman who had endured hardship, found strength, and was now ready to rebuild her family. Every phrase was perfectly rehearsed, designed to charm the court and soften her past. When it was my turn, I took a slow breath and stood. The judge, a woman with steady gray eyes named Judge Reynolds, gestured for me to begin. My voice shook at first, but steadied as I started presenting the documents. I handed over the thick binder containing years of medical records, school reports, and financial receipts, proof of every meal, every appointment, every night spent comforting Ella and Nora through nightmares. I explained how Janet had vanished without contact for 5 years, how she had left only a few phone numbers that were soon disconnected. The lawyer interrupted once, objecting to irrelevant emotional testimony, but Judge Reynolds silenced him. "Let her finish," she said firmly. When I reached the financial section, I unfolded the bank statements, loan defaults, and unpaid tax forms registered under Janet's name. I didn't look at her as I spoke, but I could feel her unease growing. Then came the moment everything shifted. Caleb leaned forward, whispering something to Janet, and when the judge asked a direct question about their living situation, he lost his temper. We wouldn't even be here if she hadn't stolen what was supposed to be ours. He snapped, his voice echoing through the courtroom. The lawyer froze. Janet's face drained of color. Judge Reynolds looked up sharply. "I beg your pardon?" she said. Caleb muttered. "The property. The money from the estate, it should have gone to us. She's using those kids to keep it." The judge's gaze hardened. "Mr. Wallace, this hearing concerns the welfare of minors, not inheritance disputes. Your statement will be noted." She turned to Janet. "Is that your position as well?" Ma'am, Janet's voice cracked. "No, Your Honor. I just want my daughters back." But it was too late. The courtroom had shifted. What had once looked like a plea for motherhood now reeked of greed. The judge asked a few more questions, this time about Janet's employment and housing. The answers were vague, unconvincing. "You say you have steady work?" Judge Reynolds asked. Janet nodded weakly. "Part-time at a diner. And stable housing? We're staying with friends for now." The judge made notes, then looked at me. "Ms. Brooks, do the children wish to speak?" I hesitated but nodded. Ella and Nora were waiting outside with a court representative. They entered, their small hands clutching each other. When the judge asked who they preferred to stay with, Ella spoke softly but clearly. "We want to live with Aunt Holly." Nora echoed her sister, her voice trembling. Janet broke down, covering her face as quiet sobs filled the room. Judge Reynolds leaned back in her chair, scanning her notes one last time. "This court has reviewed all evidence and testimony," she said finally. "Given the financial instability of Ms. Wallace and the consistent care demonstrated by Ms. Brooks, full guardianship will be granted to Ms. Brooks, effective immediately." Her gavel struck the desk, once sharp and final. Caleb stood abruptly, muttering a curse, and stormed out of the courtroom without looking back. Janet remained seated, her shoulders shaking. For a moment, I just stood there frozen. Then Ella's hand slipped into mine. I looked down at her and managed a trembling smile. Outside the courthouse, the sunlight felt unreal, almost too bright after so many weeks of fear. The girls ran ahead to the car, laughing softly, unaware of the storm that had just ended. I lingered on the steps, letting the weight of the verdict sink in. After years of silent struggle and doubt, it was over. The papers I held weren't just legal documents, they were proof that love had triumphed over blood, proof that the family we build can matter more than the one we're born into. Months passed and life finally found its rhythm again. The mornings no longer felt heavy and laughter returned to our kitchen. Ella practiced piano while Nora read aloud from her favorite storybooks, their voices filling the house with warmth that once felt impossible. For the first time in years, peace became our new normal. News about Janet reached me through Carla. Caleb had left her not long after the hearing, fleeing Cleveland to avoid his mounting debts. Rumor had it he sold his car, emptied their shared account, and vanished somewhere down south. Janet stayed behind, her life unraveling piece by piece. One gray afternoon, she appeared at my doorstep. I recognized her instantly, though she looked thinner, worn down, her eyes hollow from sleepless nights. She said she only wanted to talk. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She began with tears, apologizing for the pain she caused, for abandoning the girls, for trying to take them away. Her voice trembled in all the right places, but beneath it I heard the same rehearsed tone I had heard in court. It didn't take long before she revealed the truth. "I just need a little help to get back on my feet," she said softly. "Maybe a few $1,000s just until I find work." I stood quietly, feeling the same ache that had once broken me. I wanted to believe she had changed, but her words felt hollow. "Janet," I said finally, "you don't need money from me. You need to start over honestly, without expecting someone else to save you." Her face hardened. She muttered something under her breath, grabbed her purse, and walked out without saying goodbye. Through the window, I watched her disappear down the road, her figure growing smaller until the evening light swallowed her. I knew then that our paths had finally diverged for good. Weeks later, the court approved the adoption. I became not just their guardian, but their mother in every sense. On a bright Sunday morning, I took Ella and Nora to the cemetery where Evan was buried. The grass was green and soft, the air warm with spring. We knelt before his headstone, placing a bouquet of lilies at its base. "They're safe now," I whispered, my voice steady. "You can rest easy." The girls each laid a small daisy beside the flowers. As we walked away, sunlight filtered through the trees, brushing our faces with gold. Ella slipped her hand into mine, and Nora took my other. We walked together, the three of us, hand in hand, leaving behind the shadows that had once haunted us. For the first time in years, the future didn't scare me. It felt open, calm, and entirely our own. The chapter of pain had finally closed, and in its place, love had written something lasting. Love isn't proven by blood or promises. It's proven by who stays when it's hardest. True family is built by presence, not pretense. It isn't about who shares your name, but who shows up when everyone else walks away. In the end, greed destroys what love could have saved, and those who chase money often lose what matters most. Real love endures, protects, and chooses to stay, even when it's hard. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If you were standing where I stood, would you choose to forgive or walk away? I truly want to hear your thoughts. Your story might be the light someone else needs to find their way through pain. Please share what you feel in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt family dramas that remind us love is never easy.